Hello and welcome to episode number 139, where I chat with Amy Wheeler about Generation Z, who are between the ages of 10 and 25, these formative years that shape their values, their habits, and their worldview. And especially during this time of the COVID crisis and so much upheaval, we talk about how we can support this generation who are going to lead our future. So please stay tuned. Hello and welcome to Elements of Ayurveda, Empowering Wisdom of Life. I'm your host, Colette, and in this podcast, I hope to empower you to take charge of your own health by sharing the holistic teachings of Ayurveda, the ancient healing tradition from India. We will also discuss topics like health and wellness, nutrition, yoga, fitness, meditation, breath work, and much more, as well as interviewing lots of inspiring people along the way. My humble wish is to help you to connect to your true nature, to Mother Nature, and to each other. If you like the content, be sure to subscribe to the show, and the new episodes will automatically download for you to enjoy. If you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend you listen to the first couple of episodes where I do an introduction to Ayurveda and the mind-body types. I've also set up a Facebook group for us to connect and to support each other, and I'd love for you to join me over at Elements of Ayurveda podcast group. And now here's the show. Hello and welcome to Elements of Ayurveda. I am welcoming our usual guest, Amy Wheeler, back to the show. Hi, Amy. How you doing today?
Great. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's lovely as always to talk to you, my dear. And today, Amy suggested the topic, and a really good one at that. We're going to talk about Generation Z and the mental health of this generation as they go through this current situation we're in. We have lots going on now. We're recording this on, what date is it? June 23rd. So we have, the COVID, we have the Black Lives Matter protests. There's a lot going on in the world. And these kids, or young adults, I should say, are from about the ages of 10 to 25, right? And they're in their formative years. They're either in high school or college or early work years. And it's a really sensitive age where they're forming their habits, their values, their worldview for the rest of their lives. It's an age where it can really affect their outlook for the rest of their lives. So what happens now is really shaping these kids, right, Amy?
Yes, and that's kind of what's worrying me, to be honest. That's why I wanted to talk about this. I've been a college professor for 25 years now, and what I'm seeing in the kids that are coming through the last year is very different than what I saw the first 24 years. And I'm not sure. I think parents are also worried, and probably educators are worried, but I'm not sure if the rest of our society realizes what's happening to their mental health. And I really feel strongly that we need to get word out so that we can get on helping them. Because if we allow it to go too far before we intervene, we could have a disaster on our hands.
Right. So what are you seeing that's concerning you?
Well, I mean, on the positive side, let's start with the positive because there's so many amazing things. This, according to The Economist, they've done studies on all of this, and this Generation Z is super educated. They're totally into helping their families. They're very honest. They're very well behaved. They're polite. They're, all these wonderful things. They're willing to help others. That's a big part of they're into climate change. They're into Black Lives Matter. They're into making this world a better place and kind of cleaning up all the damage that, our generations have done. They don't care so much about, making all this money and greed. They're more minimalist. They're into relationships. They're into, really being there for one another. So those are all the fantastic things. The hard things that I'm a little worried about is having to do all of their education on Zoom so that they're not getting that social interaction and that brain development at a very critical point in their lives.
Right.
I'll just list all this stuff off and then we can go back and dig into any of it. I'm also concerned that they're very stressed out and depressed. So, this last quarter I taught college on Zoom, and at the beginning of every class period, every class I taught, I would say we need to have a mental health check-in. And I asked them each to type into the chat, how are you feeling today? What's going on? Almost every person, almost every single day in all of my classes wrote stressed, depressed, overwhelmed, exhausted. Like it was Thomas on steroids. I was just like, for 10 weeks, I mean, how many classes is that? It's, I had 4 classes that meet twice a week with 30 students each. Do that math. And almost every single one of them was telling me that every single time. I'm stressed, I'm depressed, I'm overwhelmed. They don't know if there's going to be any jobs out there for them. They're not getting to spend time with their friends. Many of them are locked in very, very dysfunctional households. Whereas it used to be that they could go to college and get away from their alcoholic parent or their abusive brother, whatever's going on. They are literally locked in with very dysfunctional people that they can't escape. And, I got the opportunity to see all of their households because, we're on Zoom and they could see my household and I could see what was going on behind them. The people walking by, the conversations that they were having, it was just, in 25 years, I've never gotten to see the inner lives of my students. It was fascinating.
Wow.
So where do you want to dig in?
Well, yeah, I'd like to talk about, the digital aspect of it to start with, because they are known as the digital generation, right? And they're growing up knowing so much about technology, much more than we did in our generation, and that they're very adept to that. However, like you said, their social interactions already were on the lower scale. And now take away their social interaction in their college life. And that has a huge devastating effect because they were already the generation that was doing a lot online and already that feeling of isolation. And now add this COVID crisis where they're in confinement and learning online, and now their future college, right? Because you're going to do online classes in fall. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean,
right.
We're online indefinitely, a lot of colleges, and the ones that are not, I think will go there with the second wave of COVID hitting.
Right. So that has a huge impact. It's not just for a short period of time. It's like, oh man, my next semester, my next years of college, taking away that whole college experience.
Or even high school.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking about people who are 10 years old all the way to 25.
Right.
So we're basically talking about junior high, high school, and college are devastated. They're gone. Our brains are developing on the, social, emotional, and prefrontal cortex levels all the way up until about age 26 to age 30. So when you think about how our brains develop and the fact that they're not going to get this opportunity, it's going to pass them by. You can't go back when you're 45 really and develop those areas of your brain very well.
Right. You hear people lamenting about, I didn't go to my prom or things like that, like these milestones in our life. But now these kids and young adults are going to miss out on so much, homecoming, just being in college life or high school life, these group activities, what's going to happen to group sports. And, like I said a moment ago, they were already online a lot. They already were, in this Vata world and always overstimulated. So now add their learning onto this and the lack now of time away where they just have social interactions outside of technology. That's going to have a huge effect on them.
So that's exactly what I talk to them about in my classes is that your mind is overstimulated. You're getting this global inundation of information like no one's ever received before. And your body is sedentary. You're sitting there on the couch. You don't go outside. And that's a really horrible combination that leads to great amounts of depression, actually. That the mind gets overstimulated and crashes into depression. And the electronics are almost like an addiction.
Right.
The body is so sedentary that, so, these are the things I talk to them about, is you get up in the morning and you move your body. You must move your body first thing in the morning. And if I could get them to, I'd like them to do a second movement session of some sort, later in the day. That's going to help their mind as much as anything. And then honestly, there's no way to get them off electronics. It's that I kind of pick my battles.
No, absolutely. They are that generation. It's part of their lives. It's part of their body sometimes. It's the phone in their hands, And
it's an addiction. Yeah. And like any addiction, having someone harass you from the outside to get rid of your addiction doesn't work. Yeah. Right? So I think we're going to have to find really creative ways to kind of organically get them to see how much better their mental health is if they limit, not get rid of, but limit their screen time, and just start having these conversations about, like for most of them, they don't even understand that all that screen time leads to anxiety and depression. They haven't put that together yet. Right. So things that seem super simple for you and me, they don't see these connections. And when you tell them, they have these aha moments like, oh, you mean if I only did 4 hours of screen time a day as opposed to 9, I might feel better? Right. Seems kind of silly to us, but
of course they're so young.
Yeah, so young.
Yeah, and they grew up with this, so they don't know any different. We remember a time when we didn't have a cell phone attached to us, so but they haven't known any different. And I do think that, and it's great that you're supporting them and that this generation really needs our support and understanding, because this is when they're shaping their habits. If you're a parent at home with someone in this age group, or if you're a teacher, or if you're teaching, yoga, or have some time with the people in this age group, that helping them understand having these daily habits. We talk about dinacharya a lot, but simple daily habits, like you said, Amy, exercising, getting some movement in every day. It's so important, because these are the habits that will stick with them, and these are the habits that will keep them in balance during this very emotional time for them.
Right. So I would not, because I'm teaching just regular college students, right. I wouldn't say dinacharya, and I wouldn't talk about, even the traditional dinacharya things, they are not going to do. They're not going to, do oil pulling.
No, but things like getting up at a certain time, going out in nature, exercising, eating at a certain time, those simple things. Exactly.
Kind of like a Western version of dinacharya that, we always set our alarm for this time and try to make that before, 10 a.m. and, just really laying out for them what a healthy lifestyle should look like. And so many of them, I'm doing a lot of private consultations too, because the parents are calling me and so distraught that their kids are sleeping till 11, 12, 1 o'clock every day and staying up until 2 in the morning. And the parents are like, wow, this is not, we don't want our high school and college kids living like this. Right. So they're saying, will you help us? And the kids are telling me they don't want to live like that either, but they don't have anything else to do. They're bored. They're kind of restless. They're not ready to go to bed because they haven't moved their body. They haven't gotten out, in nature, or even just out and about. And so they're just feeling that awful kind of exhausted, overwhelmed, yet restless feeling. It's almost like having both Rajas and Tamas are high. And so they just lay there in this kind of uncomfortable state until 2 in the morning, and then fall asleep and don't wake up till 10, 11, 12 the next day. So this idea of dinacharya and how are we going to keep you on track? And here's when you work out. Here's when you eat. Here's when you do your studies. Here's when you maybe go to work. Some of them are still going to work, and just really getting strict about that schedule seems to help them tremendously.
Yeah. A very simple, like you said, schedule that's kind of tailored to their lifestyle, not bringing in anything too crazy, but literally sleep, eat, exercise, putting that into a structure. And those little things can have a huge effect. on how their mental outlook for the day and how they're feeling. And like you said, the tamasic effect of it. You know, if they're sleeping in till mid-morning, they're taking on that kapha heaviness and that lethargy and that inertia. And that's going to stick with them. And it's going to be like a snowball effect of this heaviness, that's really going to affect their body and their mind.
That's right. I'm trying to get them up by 7 or 7:30.
Right.
Even that's a little late, but
right. No, but still,
for them, yeah, it's a happy medium.
Yeah.
I just had this really wonderful session with a young lady doing exactly what we're talking about, just figuring out her daily schedule, helping her eat at regular times, and, you know, all of this. And about 2 months went by and I didn't hear from her. And I thought, oh, well, I hope it worked for her, you know. But then I got a call from another young woman who I didn't recognize. And I said, how did you hear about me? And she said, oh, what you gave so-and-so just changed her life. And she's so happy now. And so I wanted something like that too. And I was like, oh my God, that's so cute. That's the one.
Lovely.
Yeah, she actually did it and told her friends about it. I was just like over the moon.
That's lovely. And how old are they?
These two are going into college. So that's the other thing. They're between their senior year, which pretty much got ruined. No homecoming, no last days of school, no, you know, senior everything.
Yeah.
And now their freshman year of college is ruined because they're not going to college, right? And they're anxious and depressed and, you know, just all over the place. So it's a tough time.
Right. But as you're seeing with these girls that you just helped, it can also be an empowering time for them while in the face of crisis, while in the face of seems like everything is going haywire, that you now have empowered this girl to put practices in place that keep her on a level foundation, that keep her in a place where she's, you know, her friend said she was happy and she feels good. So I think learning how to buffer the stress and to maintain balance and a solid foundation in times of crisis can really empower somebody at that age and can create a lot of resilience and show them that, oh, just because things are falling apart around me doesn't mean that I have to fall apart with it.
Well, can I tell you something else that's a little bit tragic, but also hopeful? I've had many young women right around that age group that I just described say that while they've been home with COVID, a lot of repressed memories or things that they didn't want to deal with or trauma that they've had is coming up. So here they are sitting at home, and it's almost like their little nervous systems are relaxing. There's nothing to do. And that, given the past traumas, the opportunity to come up and be seen, and they're freaking out because they're like, what is going on? How come this is happening? And a variety of different traumas. I've really been helping them to realize that you can only process and digest trauma when you allow yourself to sit in the parasympathetic nervous system, and that's when it feels safe enough to come out, be seen. And our job together is to digest it, to process it, to learn from it, and to let it go. Right. And I'm telling them, like, it's good that you get to do this right now. It's good that you have this time out, because otherwise you just keep yourself, you know, busy and not thinking about it. And you're 45 years old wondering why, you know.
Exactly.
So I think there is, even though that's painful for them and they don't like it, they're like, help me get rid of this. There is some really beautiful digestion and processing and elimination that's happening in this quiet pause that we have for all of us, but especially for teens.
Well, like you said, if they're learning this now, gosh, I wish I learned this as a teenager, you know, like these tools of digesting old wounds and so on. I'm sure they're getting triggered as well because, you know, they're at home for the near future. They're not going away to college, like you said. They're at home with their parents. And I'm interested in that because, you know, the generational clash, right? Because these Gen Zs were mostly raised probably by Gen Xs. And
Yeah.
have you noticed anything when you're talking to the parents? Have you noticed any big differences in the generations or how they're relating to their children?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think so many people, put down the millennials and they're not going to make it and they're this and they're bad that. And it's almost like the Gen Zers have gone in a different direction. They, like I said, they're well behaved, they're well dressed, they're respectful, they're polite. When you ask them what their values are, I've done some research on this. A huge part of what they value is helping their families and actually being in relationship with their parents. Whereas the earlier generations were like, get me away from my family. I'm only going to, my only source of information is my friends.
Right.
This generation, they're willing to connect with adults, with their teachers, with their parents in a very honest way. So I think to answer your question, the parents that I'm seeing working with their kids are actually having a very healthy interaction and really doing a great job. I think they've raised some really great kids.
That's good to hear. That's good because I guess when you think of Gen X's, they would be more like the generation that would have been very career focused, right? Family and career. And quite stressed with that.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of hard work and so on. So, they've instilled that probably in their children, that sense of you must work hard, which should help them now, right? These values of working hard, especially as these children now and young adults are coming into a market where there's going to be less jobs. And they're probably going to have to go more towards working online, which is a big shift now. And there's probably going to be less security for them, right? So they are going to have that resilience and build up that resilience because then if they have less security in these jobs, they're on the young end of the job market, right? So they're not going to be like people in their late 30s, 40s, 50s who have more of a secure job.
That's right. And they're really interested in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, which is great.
They get it that nobody's going to take care of them. There's no pension. There's probably not healthcare benefits.
Right.
And they have got to figure out a way to provide for themselves, which I think is really scary. I mean, I can't imagine coming out of college. When I came out, I was like, okay, I'm going to go get a good job where I can pay my rent.
Absolutely. I remember when I arrived in the States, it was like, okay, I need a job with benefits. That was my focus.
Right. And that's not available.
Yeah.
And if it was, not all of them want to go out into the world, especially with COVID,
right,
and do that. So we're seeing these huge bursts of creativity. And that's another amazing thing about this COVID time is when structures fall apart, structures meaning our economy, the way we do things, everything we value, all society is just exploding. When that happens, that's when bursts of creativity and ingenuity and entrepreneurship just flare up, which is a pretty amazing thing to watch.
These kids and young adults are our future. And this is what we need. If you think for the boomer generation, Generation X, things are always getting better, right? There was always better technology. Life was getting better for the most part, right? We had some obviously recessions and stuff in there, but for the most part, it was an upward moving scale. But now, we're at quite a bottom here. But that's what we need. We need this entrepreneurial spirit, this different way of thinking and looking at things and this creativity. So we need to just support this generation because they are our future. They're going to help steer us out of this and give them the support for the simple things. We don't want to, stagnate their creativity or the way they're thinking or try to tell them how to think, but we want to give them that foundation of security, whether it's just in supporting them with their daily habits or giving them a roof over their head or providing support for them in other ways so that they can flourish.
That's exactly right. That the way we saw the world or our parents saw the world is not going to work for them because that's not the world they're entering into. So what I'm seeing, at least in my students, is these parents that love their kids to death and are so worried about their future, the parents are giving them mental emotional support, but yet the freedom to go out and do it their way, because the parents feel like, well, I'm baffled. I don't know. I can't give them advice in this climate. And I'll just give you an example of one of the young men that I know, and it may work for him. He bought a ton of Bitcoin when it was really low, which is that electronic currency. It is now around $10,000 a Bitcoin or something like that. It's supposed to go up, exponentially in the next 3 years, because a lot of electronic currencies are starting to do that. He's going to cash out and then use that money to do like mini homes, or what do you call that? Tiny homes.
Oh.
To basically buy them, fix them up, sell them. So he's got this whole big plan that is so out of the box of any of our thinking. But he knows his generation is going to want to live in tiny homes, that's going to be a big market, right? Because they're minimalist.
Yes.
And he's already figured it out how he can make $200,000 to get his tiny home business going. I mean, it's just remarkable.
And this is it. A person of our generation couldn't think of that, because for a person of our generation, home ownership was important. I do love the small home movement, by the way. I want that. But in general, I think of people in Ireland, like home ownership is very important. Or, in the US too, right? In most countries, like having your property and buying and owning, your property and so on is very important. And a lot of times it was seen as a status symbol to have a big property, right? And to have the big luxurious garden and all that comes with that.
They want their tiny home on wheels so that they have the flexibility to go wherever they want to go at a moment's notice.
I hear them. I'd be up for that, definitely. Have the freedom, have your minimalist home, and then have the freedom to move on as well. And I think, going back to what you said at the start about they're really about helping their families and really nurturing relationships with their families. That's wonderful, because that will provide the support for them as well, because they won't have the support maybe of the secure job that we had in the past, or the benefits with the job, like the health care and all that used to come with the job. But they will have that support and that security with their families.
Yeah, I want to say one caveat to that. So that's, the group that I work with are kids from blue collar families. They're first generation college students. Their parents have worked their whole lives to get these kids into school. Right. So that's happening for them. They have that mental emotional support. I think we also have to recognize there's a whole group of kids whose parents didn't fare so well, who for whatever reason couldn't hold the lives together. And those kids are really falling through the cracks because they don't have that family support and there's no external support. Those kids, I'm sad to say, but I think we're going to see a rise in suicides. I think we're going to see people really, really desperate just for the basic needs to be met. And I don't know what we need to do something about that. I mean, in the United States, people don't want to hear about basic income, but it might come to that.
Yeah. And I think as well, they were talking about, having the policemen in the schools, but not having any nurses. I also think that now more than ever, there needs to be more mental health services available online for students. And that needs to be a priority, especially now.
Right. So let's go into the Black Lives Matter and the protests and all of this, because this, to me, is also a very fascinating thing to look at. Most of the kids that I'm working with are people of color. So the university that I teach at, Caucasian, is actually one of the least groups. And then, Black and Hispanic and Asian are all much, much higher.
Okay.
So the kids I've been working with for the last 25 years, they have been cocooned in this utopia of, we love one another. We care about one another. Color is not an issue on this campus. Like it's just a utopia.
Right.
And they don't see their skin color holding them back because they've been so supported by the administration, the teachers, each other. Now they're looking out into the world at these protests and realizing, oh, the world is not mirroring what I just had at my university for 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
And they are upset. They are like, oh my gosh, we have to do something. If we could create this little utopia at Cal State, we must go out into the world and find a way to change the world. Right. I don't think some of them even knew how horrible it was for most people of color.
Wow.
You know?
That's amazing. And also I can't imagine the fear that brings up in them to realize that's the world that I have to now navigate.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're totally into the Black Lives Matter movement and the protests. I mean, they're 100% on board. And so that's a whole nother shift. I don't know how it's going for you in Europe, Colette, but this is different than anything we've ever experienced in the United States. This
so
has
should be
power.
And
yes,
so
it should be.
Yeah.
And, progress is going to come too slow. It's not going to be enough. I'm not saying we're there by any means. There's a lot of heavy lifting that's going to have to be done for decades. But I think especially with these young people on board, they're not going to go back to the old ways.
Right.
They're just not going to have it. Right.
Yeah, I did a conversation recently with Dr. Jay from Kerala Ayurveda, and we were talking about the murder of Mr. George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter protests and everything that's happening. And we talked about how necessary it is, first of all, to recognize the pain of these open wounds that's happening right now. And unless it's recognized or acknowledged, that nobody can start any healing. You have still people in government who are denying that there's any systemic racism, which is mind blowing. But it's, unless it's recognized, there's no moving forward. And then also we talked about how self-transformation or self-realization is global transformation. Like it has to start with the self. And Dr. J was talking about how it comes down to, what you put out in the world and healing yourself first so that you can resonate that energy, vibrate out that goodwill, that compassion, that empathy for others. But that's why I think it starts with yourself. And I think that if this generation understands that I need to take care of home base first so that I am in a good place so I can go out there and make the changes I want to make, Do they have mental health services in your school, in Cal State?
Oh, yeah. We have an entire psychological counseling center that's even operating through Zoom.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So, yeah, I do think for these kids to understand that the change starts with themselves, right? And hopefully that they'll feel that sense of empowerment. Again, going back to that girl that you helped and you gave her some advice on what she could bring into her day and she saw the transformation herself, that they can feel empowered, that first of all, they can take care of themselves and know then that they can go out into the world and help others make that change so that they can live in the world that they want to and create a future, because goodness knows we need their help.
Yes. I think they're going to lead us. I don't want to get too political, but when you see the stunt they pulled at the Tulsa Trump rally of buying all the tickets, the stadium was empty. They are a force to be reckoned with.
Right? Absolutely.
They have skills and ideas and things that we could never comprehend.
Right.
Like I'm almost scared to see what they're going to come up with next. It's like, oh, they're sitting home scheming on how to change the world.
Yeah. But we need that energy and that creativity and that new way of looking at things in order to move forward. And what's happening now feels like everything has been turned upside down, but this is the point where we can't let go and we need to keep on pushing forward to break through into something new. Obviously, we're seeing it in the States, but also we're seeing the support worldwide. So I think this is a huge moment in history for change and transformation to happen.
This may be a very strange way to look at it, but the fact that we're all kind of locked in our houses without a lot of distraction, I think helps us as a society take this pause and say, okay, what are we going to do differently? How are things going to change? And as you and I know from being students of yoga, nothing happens until you focus your mind and set your mind in a direction and stay focused on that goal.
Mm-hmm.
You can have all the good, new age, heartwarming feelings you want, and I want to help everyone in love and light. But until you sit down and think, how am I going to transform my business to be in alignment with Black Lives Matter? How am I going to transform my internal racism that I've been unconscious about? Until we sit and focus, and this is what the young people are doing too, nothing changes. So it's strange, but could this pause of, who knows, could be 2 or 3 years with COVID, give us the sustained focus we need to make those systemic and structural changes?
Right, exactly. And when we think about it, Amy, these young adults are in the pitta stage of life. So they're in that transformative stage of life. They're in that time where it's all about conversion and change, and they have that energy and that fire within them.
Right. And that's why I'm scared to see what they come up with next. I mean, I think they could flip entire political systems and economy on its head.
Right.
And I don't know how they're going to do it, but I'm a little, I like cringe. I'm like, okay, what are they going to do to us?
But it's not working. It's not, these systems are not working for everybody. So they need to be changed. They need to be flipped.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful thing, but there is going to be pain and suffering to many different parties while we transform ourselves.
Right, exactly.
The alchemy is happening.
Yes, exactly. So if you were to give advice to parents out there or people working with this generation, again, going from ages of 10 to 25, teachers, people who are seeing these young adults on a regular basis, what advice would you give them? Kind of do a summary of what we talked about, and what advice would you suggest as someone who's who's a lecturer, who's in a college system already and teaching these children on a regular basis?
Well, can I tell a little story to illustrate what I think we should do?
Love stories.
So I had written on a Facebook post that I have 2 older mentors in my life who are in their 60s and 70s, but I also have a younger mentor in my life who's 20. Mm-hmm. And people wrote back and they're like, how can you possibly have a mentor that's younger than you, that doesn't have as much life experience as you? And, kind of putting it down, like, why would you, a 50-year-old woman, have a 20-year-old mentor? Mm. And I just laughed because I thought, oh, this person doesn't get it. By connecting with these Gen Zs that are so respectful and so kind and so honest and so willing to help and have their hearts and their minds in the right place and are going to transform our world into something better. Why wouldn't I want that as a mentor? Why wouldn't I want to be on board with that? Why wouldn't I want to follow their every move and let them teach me where we're going to go together next, right? And so that's what I would say to parents and teachers and administrators. And this is what we do at the university that I work at. We actually put the young people in positions of power, and because they've earned it, and they are well behaved, and they are very articulate, and they do see clearly, we've put them in positions of power and said, where are we going? Where do you think we should go together? And I think that's revolutionary. Absolutely. I think we've always had this idea that I'm older, I have more life experience, you're young, you don't know anything yet. But this Generation Z is very wise. They are getting it, and we should follow their lead. I'm not saying we can't co-lead, because there's some things we know that they don't know. But I'm just really impressed with all my students. I think of them as my equal. Maybe I have a few more years of teaching experience, but in terms of seeing the world clearly and what is coming towards us, we're equal. And it's okay for me to step back and let them lead and listen to them.
Exactly. And that requires humility from those of us who are older, and allow them to flourish. And also that we can provide a foundation for them, right? Support to help them, but let their brilliance shine, and let their thoughts and their creativity and out of the box thinking help progress us forward.
And in that way, it's not that much different than what a lot of us white people need to do with the Black Lives Matter movement too, right?
Oh,
that
absolutely.
we need to step back and put other people in positions of power and allow them to lead and to basically tell us what's up, because clearly we didn't understand. So it's a transformational moment. And I personally, I love it. I love sitting back as an older white woman and listening and allowing and lifting others up. It just feels so, so good. I'm at the stage of my life where I don't want to be on stage as the know-it-all who has all the power. I mean, oh my God, that's just so much work. Please, let's let a really intelligent woman like, AOC lead the show for a while. I see her and I'm just blown down. I'm like, how old is she?
Amazing.
Wow.
Her ideas, her thoughts, her vision is amazing.
And that she, to me, embodies what's coming forward.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I agree. Absolutely.
They are intelligent, but they've also got street smarts.
Yeah. Yeah. They're very worldly, because they grew up in a global society more so than we did.
Right. And like AOC, they want to do what's good for the most people, for the common woman and common man.
Yes.
They're not into, the 1% elitists get to have all the power and the money and control. They're like, no, let's spread this amongst the people.
Yeah, they understand the concept of we're all in this together and there's less of this pyramid of power and I need to step on top of you because of my fear so that I can get up to the top of the pyramid, so there's less of that. Which is what we need less of in the world. And I agree with you. I think, these times are crazy. There's a lot of people suffering. But it's also a time of great change. Right.
And, there's this idea that if we don't have these power structures, that the people at the bottom are going to be lazy and they're not going to do enough and they're just going to want to live off welfare or something like that. This generation, they are hard workers. Mm-hmm. They want to get it done. Mm-hmm. Of any of the kids I've had in 25 years, they are emailing me daily, like, did I do this assignment right? Is this what you were looking for? Is there anything I can do better? I really want an A in this class. I've never had that in 25 years. And this last year, I couldn't keep up with my inbox. I was like, what is going on?
Well, that's what, I think I mentioned that earlier, where they were raised by the Generation X, who were the parents who were, the ones who were trying to balance career and family, but they were very career oriented. So I think that hardworking spirit may have come through from their parents, which is fantastic. And that skill set is going to really work for them now, especially as they have to really pull themselves out of this hole we're in. And hopefully their entrepreneurial spirit will kick in, and that hardworking skills, and that they won't become, more Tomasic, but instead see this as a time of transformation and really, empower them to push themselves and us forward.
Yes. So, we're kind of getting back to the beginning now, this idea that they're all telling me every day how exhausted and overwhelmed and depressed and lethargic they feel. And at the same time, there is this hope. Yeah. So I think, some of the best things we can do as yoga and Ayurveda people, as teachers and coaches and, people that care about Gen Zers, is get them moving, get rid of the lethargy, get them, exercising outdoors, get them doing, dance class on the internet, whatever. Right. The more we can get them moving and eating well and sleeping.
Eating is a big one. Yeah.
Yeah. And sleeping at appropriate hours. If we just did those three things, boom, we're done.
Yeah. And I think of, because they're growing up in a time too where there's, the processed food, the food industry, the classic American diet, the standard American diet, as they say, is very very bad, to use a very mild word. But, you know, if people are out there, if they're parents of these, you know, this generation, is making sure that you're providing them with food that's really going to nourish them, you know, seasonal, organic, local, non-processed, non-processed being the big one, and helping these children, young adults, understand the power of eating healthy and moving, like you're saying, exercising and a good night's sleep. Those 3 pillars would really support them.
That's right. And, you know, that sounds easy, but I think they really do need someone to push them and say, I want you in bed by 11.
Right.
I want you up by 7. You're going to get up and you're going to drink a bunch of water and then get a workout in, go out, and, you know, do some push-ups and sit-ups and go run a mile.
Yeah.
Like, they want, the ones I'm working with, they actually want me to set the times up and the structure.
Ah, okay.
Like literally at this time, I want you to do this.
Great.
You know, I co-negotiate with them, but they really just want me to help them figure out how to make that structure. And then
that's fab.
It seems they're sticking with it.
Yeah, I can imagine, you know, if parents are listening to me saying, you know, provide them with a structure, it's like, oh my goodness, you know, because sometimes they won't want to hear it from their parents. So yeah, so for someone like you, who's, you know, a coach and a mentor for them, you giving them that information may be better received than from a parent.
You know, if I had more time, I would do a podcast on exactly this. I think it's so needed. I know, looking at you and your podcast, how much time it takes you. And I don't know if I can commit that right now.
Right. And I think even for somebody, you know, for that generation, having someone that they, you know, maybe somebody that is in the music industry or, you know, an athlete that they admire, I think coming from that level would be great. Like someone that they really have as a role model. And maybe it's not music or an athlete, but someone that they really see as a role model, and that can have a big impact on many people, right? Across many walks of life. I think that would be amazing.
Yeah.
But we are seeing people like LeBron James doing some great work. And there's lots of people out there doing great work and understanding that they have this massive platform and using this platform now to really help support the next generation. And I think that's where we need people who have these big platforms to step up now and really support these kids coming up.
Yeah. Like, you're just giving me bursts of ideas. Wouldn't it be cool to have a podcast where you interview kids, young adults, you know, 10 to 25, where you talk to them about this stuff and actually have live people in real time talking about all of this? That would be really cool.
Right. There you go. Something for you to chew on, Amy.
I have too much to chew on. But it's, you know, sometimes you put these things into the universe and the universe decides yes or no.
There you go. There you go. Just let us stew for a while and see if it comes back around.
Yep, that's it.
Well, Amy, thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to say before we finish up? I think I'm glad you suggest this conversation today. I think, you know, you're in a position where you see this generation on a regular basis and you're really tuned into them. And obviously you care very deeply for your students, which is a beautiful thing. Is there anything else that we didn't cover that you'd like to say?
Just one last thing, and that is, my perception is they have very open hearts. They're very willing to connect. There's no wall between us and them. They are totally open. So let them know you love them, that they belong, that you care, that they are important to you. Like that's what they're craving. And there's no reason not to tell them every single day how much they're loved and cared for.
That's beautiful. And what a beautiful foundation for them, you know, to have that, again, that security, because that's what they need right now. There's that security when everything else feels like it's falling apart. They need that foundation of love. We all need more love in this world, Amy, right now.
We do. We do.
Well, thank you
for having me.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. And thank you for this great conversation. And again, for suggesting the topic. I really appreciate it. And all your work you're doing, Amy, helping these kids.
Well, it seems to be the Dharma that has been chosen for me.
Yeah, it seems like you have a great relationship with them too. So thank you for nourishing this next generation.
Thank you.
All right, my dear. We will talk again soon. In the meantime, take good care of yourself.
And you too. Exercise, sleep well, eat well.
Yes, ma'am. Take care, Amy. Thanks again.
Bye.
Bye. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Amy, and I think it highlights the fact that we need to take care of and support this generation as they live through this tough time in their formative years. And these are our future leaders. So the more we nurture and support them now, the better off we'll all be. If you think that this podcast episode will be interesting to family members or friends, please share it with them. You can find the links to Amy's website, to my website and offerings over on the show notes. And if you would like to support the podcast, you could check out the Patreon page where you can leave a tip in the tip jar if you find that you're getting some valuable information from this podcast and would like to support it. And if you haven't already done so, please hit the subscribe button so the episodes will automatically download for you. And if you want to leave a rating and review, I would truly appreciate it wherever you listen to your podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take good care of yourself and be well. Ciao for now.